I feel it's one of the duties of being a professional, a social work professional. So I think what Denise wants me to talk about is how I started to get involved a little bit more with our legislators. In 2023, I showed up to a legislative coffee with our newly elected senator as well as our reelected representative. It wasn't the first legislative coffee that I've been to, but it was definitely new because of what was going on in Storm Lake. I was also taking the lead in developing a PFLAG chapter. And in January 2023 is when a whole bunch of very hateful legislation was introduced regarding the LGBTQ community. So there were about 15 of us, and some of this might get repeated, but the people we were speaking to was Senator Lynn Evans, and it was his first legislative coffee, and it was his first term, and Megan Jones, our representative for our district, and that was right after redistricting, so she was new to our district. So let me talk about legislative coffee, and we'll go over this again later. In Storm Lake, we have 3 legislative coffees on Saturdays. It's usually the second or third Saturday of the month. This year, it's the third. And everybody's invited to come. And so it's a opportunity for people to speak to them about upcoming legislation that we're concerned about, let them know what other things we're concerned about. And so that's how we do it. I will also say that, and I think Denise might be giving you some information later about how to find what's happening in your neighborhood. Almost all of our representatives do either a legislative coffee or some type of forum, town hall. And I cannot tell you how very important that is. To attend. So the way that we did it, because of the timing of us starting a PFLAG chapter, because of the nature of the legislation that was being developed, 15 of us got there. We got there early. We all showed up in bright orange Say Gay Everyday t-shirts, and we took over the first 2 rows. There was no way to miss us. We were educators, we were social workers, we were doctors, we were nurses, we were representatives from the regional hospital. So it was representatives from the university here in Storm Lake, Buena Vista University. The other thing that we did, and this is important for you to know, they don't all come to these forums, they being the elected representatives, knowing what to expect. We were there with copies of the bill that we were concerned about. We addressed them by the number of the bill, the title of the bill, and specifically our concerns. And I'll talk a little bit later about how to actually speak to them. But I will tell you that, and I spoke, I was not hesitant. Other people were there for support and did not speak. And why I think this is so important for all of you, at least starting at the local level. If you can't get to Des Moines to meet with them, fine, but go to your regional meetings. Because after that day, there is no way that Senator Evans and Representative Jones did not know who I was. Okay? I have a picture posing in my Say Gay Everyday shirt with the senator. Even though he's against all the bills and all the things I believed in. And that outcome was important. And so here's a tip. The other thing that I did after I met them that day for the first time and I interacted with them for the first time, that was on a Saturday, so Sunday evening, I sent an email, again, reintroducing myself so that they did not forget me. And that has been a continuation since 2023. I'm pretty much well, for a number of reasons, I'm out at every local event that one or both of them are at. And we can go into that a little bit. But that is really, really important. And that is where I made a connection. I was also able to then say to Denise, I got some information from you from this meeting, and I did an email connection between Denise and the senator on some things that we were able to then pursue. So that was kind of my introduction to, or my first experience of really being active at one of those legislative coffees and legislative forums. So I think, Bridget,
Hey,
I
buddy.
think you're not on mute.
Have a good weekend.
Bridget.
You too.
So I think, I'll stop there because I think there are other points that we will make throughout the day about how to manage these conversations. But again, let me just say too that the Storm Lake is somebody in another call from another organization describes Storm Lake as a blueberry in a Red Sea here in Iowa. But I've made at least working relationships with the senator and the representative for our area, and they are not of the same party that I am. They are the majority party right now, but I found a way to work with them. And I think that's what we want everybody to get out of this session, is that it is doable. It is really doable. We'll talk about how social work prepares us to do that. So I think with that, I don't know, Denise, do you want me to just turn it over to Emily right now?
Well, I kind of want to follow up with what you said, Meg. And I
Yeah.
also want to reiterate, folks, please mute your microphones as you come into the room. We can hear you if it's not. Thanks. So Meg, I think you're right about the building of relationships and kind of the pass off. And I think that Emily's going to speak to that a little bit too. But it was absolutely invaluable for me to be able to go up to the Capitol after Meg let me know what had happened at their town hall meeting. And what they were looking for information on the compact, the interstate compact bill that we were working on. And so I was able to go up there on Monday, call them out and talk to them directly and answer the questions that they had about the compact bill. And so it's that kind of that tag team. You open up the conversation at a town hall meeting, you let NASW know what that was and what follow-up questions they may have had. And then we can follow up with them and give them the information that they are looking for, or giving them status reports on what's going on. And Meg's built such a good relationship with Senator Evans that he was actually able to help us get that compact bill unstuck when it felt like last year things were just jammed up. They weren't moving. The legislators were mad at each other between the two houses, and it did take some advocacy work to get that bill moving, but we did get it moved. So so that was extremely helpful. I'm going to just check the chat now.
While you're checking the chat, I will say that one of the principles that I will talk about again later is find out what you have in common. So you may be looking at the majority party and you might have a representative or senator and you think, I have nothing in common with this person. The way I connected with both of them, especially Senator Evans, is because he ran on the importance of health and mental health in Northwest Iowa and rural communities. And so we, along with addressing some of the other bills that were of great concern for us, we talked to that point. And we found agreement with him on the need for higher Medicaid reimbursement for social workers, better access, the compact, and getting rid of the conflict of interest policies that prohibited somebody like me from working in my own town because I had worked with an agency that had that. So those things became things that we could work on with him. So I had to meet him. One of the phrases I used in talking to Denise about this workshop was, he was my client. I met him where he was. I found out what he was important. I found out his values and the things that we could agree on, and we went from there. And it did help, I think, Denise a good deal when she was able to do that, as well as all my follow-up emails.
Yeah,
I'll turn it over
absolutely,
to
Meg.
Emily now.
There is another question in the chat that I just want to address for everybody because this is really important. Mark asked, is there a combined list of Iowa legislator copies, or do we check each legislator? Sort of, I guess I would answer. So Grace, who's our intern here at NASW, who I should have had her introduce herself, she's dropped in the chat a list of the town hall meetings from InfoNet Iowa. I do not know that that is a comprehensive list. They do try very hard to make it so. What I would recommend is that you actually make sure you're checking your local news sources, because all of these legislative copies are set up in a very different manner. It can even vary from one week to another as to who's hosting it. It sounds like from what Meg has said about the copies that they have up in Storm Lake, they are very consistent. They have a very consistent host. They've got a formula that goes well. That is not how it happens in all of those copies, unfortunately. So I was thinking that, yeah. And Emily, if you want to talk a little bit about how the coffees go in your area, that would be fantastic.
Sure, we have one on Saturday, tomorrow at 8 in the morning, and ours, I think there's 3 of them scheduled, so February, March, and April, and it's always the first Saturday, and then they kind of rotate between Panora and Guthrie Center for Guthrie County, and then I think after ours are 8 to 9, and then I think they go to Greene County and have a coffee up there. So we usually don't get a lot of time after the coffee to talk to them, but I'll talk a little bit more about that. So as Denise said, I am past president of the Iowa chapter, and I was part of the team that hired Denise as the executive director. And then I served a term on the national board in DC, which was a lot of fun and very interesting. And then most recently, I was on the school social work task group that worked on the school's social work national standards. So those just got published and are coming out soon. So that's kind of my experience with NASW. I was a school social worker for Heartland Area Education Agency for nearly 20 years. And then in 2023, for a myriad of reasons, one of them being a particular bill that I felt went against my code of ethics, I decided to resign and started my own consulting business, which has evolved over the last 2 years. So I have a private practice where I work with kids with neurodiverse needs on 1 day a week, and then I consult in school districts on all things related to mental health and behavior. So kind of my story. Meg mentioned that Storm Lake is a blueberry and a red sea. In Guthrie County, I'm the blueberry. It's mostly a red sea. So I have learned, like, if I want to have friends where I live, I'm gonna have to have conversations with people who think differently and vote differently than I do. And so I wear the badge proudly. I've been unofficially given the title of Guthrie County's favorite Democrat. And I think part of that is because this is kind of a little term I use, and I don't know where I originally heard it, but get curious, not furious. So when people are bringing up issues, get curious. Why do you think that way? And that kind of helps to tone down some of the emotion behind some of the issues that we feel. So one of my representatives is Representative Carter Nordman, and he is the chair of the the Health and Human Services, which is very relevant to the work that we do. So I really wanted to make sure that I had a connection with him and a relationship with him. So from the work I do with kids and in behavior analysis, we talk a lot about pairing yourself with reinforcement. So I used to be on the so I live at Lake Panorama, and we have a homeowners association, and I was on that board. And our general manager is very active in politics, and he has a really good relationship with Representative Carter Nortman, and they've had lots of discussions about some issues related to HOAs, and he helped kind of get some bills passed that helped us out last year as a homeowners association. So I asked if my friend John would introduce me to Carter Nordman, and if we could all have coffee together, and so that I could kind of get some clout based on the relationship that they already had, because I didn't know, I doubt Carter would have been as open to meeting with me, and I even got his cell phone number, so he was open to me having his personal cell phone number, and so he and I connected over the phone last year, mostly around the AEA bills. So even though I didn't work with the AEA anymore, I have lots of friends that still work there, and I knew the importance and the value of the work that the AEAs did for school districts. So it was important to me to still advocate for that. So we had a conversation over the phone, and then he agreed to meet with me at the Capitol. So he and I had a meeting there before a subcommittee meeting. And I think, again, in schools, we talk about when kids have challenging behavior, it's easy for our emotions to take over. And so it's really important for us to have data, because when you have good data, it takes the emotion out of it. And the same thing with talking to your legislators. Use your data, and that will help take some of the emotion out of it, and it gives them something concrete to hang on to. So, he had kind of his data sheet and talking points, and then I had kind of my data and talking points. So that was kind of, our first conversation. And then he came to Panorama Days, and there was a sheriff race that we were all involved in. And so we all kind of hung out informally at the festival and kind of nurtured that relationship. And then he and I met again with my friend John for coffee before the session started. So we just kind of talked about, he let me know what things were coming up and said, there's no plans to do anything more to AEAs this year. And then I just let him know, because I congratulated him on becoming chair of the Health and Human Services, and then let him know what my background was and that this was where my area of expertise was. And I wanted him to be able to come to me as a resource to ask questions if he was unsure about particular bills, because legislators make decisions based on the information they have. So if the information they have is one-sided, that's the only information they have. So, and they're not experts on every single bill that comes across their desk. We are the experts in bills that affect us and the people that we work with. So they're dependent on us to give them information and facts so that they can make the best decision possible. And I think too, think about how you receive information. Are you more likely to receive information if someone, is aggressive about it, or if, that they're coming at it with that facts, kind of that get curious, not furious. So I just wanted him to know. I think the other thing too is that I want him to trust me, that I will offer help for him, and that I will not embarrass him publicly. And so that we can keep this, that he will come to me and ask for help, and that if I go to him and offer suggestions, that he will be open to it. And I think, we all know too about relationships. Relationships are two-way. So it's not just about me demanding him to vote a certain way, but that I'm offering to help him. So I have something I'm offering him, as well as something that I'm expecting or hoping that he will return. So after that coffee, well, I told him too, asked him if he knew who Denise Rathman was, that she does the lobbying work for NASW. And he did. He's like, I pulled up a picture, and he's like, yep, I see her at the Capitol all the time. So I wanted him to know that you know, I'm not at the Capitol all the time. So if he does have questions, she would be another really great resource for him to answer those. So like I said, it kind of started with his connection with John. John connected me to him, and now I'm connecting him to Denise and NASW. So it's kind of leveraging those relationships. And like I said, it's about nurturing that relationship so that we can have those tough conversations. And I tell him to, you know, be sure you're not just in an echo chamber, you know. And he's like, well, when I go to Greene County, that's a lot, there's a lot more Democrats there that share their point of view. So you know, and he's a younger representative, he's learning, and so I want to be someone that he can learn from and feel safe learning from and doesn't feel threatened by me.
Hey, Emily, what's his background? Because as I think many of you probably realize, our legislature is part-time. Most of these folks, unless they're retired, have jobs outside of the legislature. So what's his background, Emily?
I think he has a business degree. I don't remember exactly what he does when he's not working. I should probably figure that out. But I do know that he graduated from Adel, DeSoto Minburn, and he lives in Dallas Center, Grimes, which is one of the schools that I support. And his grandparents have a lake house at Lake Panorama, and he's a Hawkeye. So we found things that we can connect on. So, but yeah, no, I think he has his own business that he runs when he's not in the legislature.
And I guess we need everybody to mute, please. And the reason I asked you that, Emily, is not only is it just a part-time legislature, it is a citizen legislature, as we call it sometimes, because these folks are not experts necessarily. And even they get assigned to these committees that have nothing to do with what it is that they've done in their previous life. And they really can be quite, and I don't mean this in a bad way, they're just uneducated on our issues because they just haven't had to deal with them. But often, if you can get to know them, like Emily's gotten to know her state rep, Meg has gotten to know her state senator and her state rep, you can build that common ground. And if you find things out, you know, you don't want to, it's easier for you guys probably to get to know them on a more personal level than it is for me because you're in their communities. But even like you talked about, Emily, when you're doing other things, you have also had opportunities to interact with him. And that's what I like to call is advocacy on the fly. If you get to know your legislators, you literally might have the opportunity, depending on, I know some of these districts are a little bit bigger than the ones here in Des Moines, which are quite compact. Like, you know, I see my senator, Janet Peterson, you know, at Costco one day. I saw her at the Drake Diner the morning after the Greenfield tornado, and my parents live in Greenfield. And so, you know, we talked about that because at Johnston, where she lives, it sustained some damage. So it is really helpful if you can build these relationships and building that trust. I mean, that's what we do as social workers, right? So Meg, you had mentioned when we were preparing for this that you have seen Megan Jones in particular at other events in that you have participated in the Storm Lake area. Is that right? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah. Yes. So, as Denise mentioned earlier, I'm also an elected official now. And so towards the end, if I don't convince you to do anything, I'm going to convince you to run for some office, even of your own town. But so I'm on the city council for Storm Lake. So that plus my involvement in a lot of other community events gets me exposure to both Senator Evans and Representative Jones. They get to show up when there's a new building for the community college being dedicated, or when we've brought in people, healthcare people from Arkansas who are working with our Pacific Islander community here in town. They get invited to everything, and I get invited to everything. And what I do is I make sure I get to talk to each of them. It doesn't have to be about that topic. It could be about anything. So about getting to know them, You know, like Senator Evans, he was in the school system. He's a former superintendent, so that's so now he's chair of the education committee. But I also get to know what are his other hobbies. What's he not doing when he's not in session? What's he doing? He's refereeing basketball. He umpires softball and baseball and little league. He comes to our school and helps with our IJAG kids. So being able to talk to them about those other interests humanizes them. And I think that's one of the things that gets in people's way. They view these elected people as having a power differential. I'm starting to hear that and I'm starting to get tired of it. They have no power over you unless you give them power. They have no authority over you. Law has authority over you. They do not. They are human beings. They have likes, they have dislikes, they have hobbies, they have interests, they have strengths, they have weaknesses. And so this I have heard over and over, I don't know how to approach them, but you approach clients, whether you're in community service, whether you're in clinical, you know how to talk to people and you know how to talk to these people. You need to just realize they're just people. If they always show up dressed up for, being in their role, sit there and imagine them in their shorts and t-shirt with a beer on a weekend, because they're just like us. They are just like us, in many, many ways. And they also have their vulnerabilities. But we know how to work with people. And that's the thing that social workers can take confidence in. You have those people skills. They might not all have those people skills, but you have those people skills. You know that the way things get done in most organizations, in most systems, is through relationship building. So with Megan Jones, for example, we had the Iowa Economic Development Authority here, and we took them this summer on a tour of all the downtown businesses in Storm Lake. And Megan Jones joined us with that. And so I get to see her in a totally different way. She also works in in Storm Lake. So there's different ways that we can interact, and that's really important. Her family's farm was impacted by the floods. She got an email from me. What do you need? How are you? How's your family? Just like I would for other human beings who need that help. So seeing her as a person, knowing a little bit about her family, the same thing with Senator Evans, helps me to interact with them differently. Now, let me also back up and say that was not easy. Okay. Senator Evans can be pretty intimidating when he sits up there and in his suit, and he has a very erect way of posture. And I just had to sit there and say, that's his role. And to really work to have this type of interaction with him was not easy for me, because he is so polar opposite in so many of his values and things that he's doing than for me. But giving up is not an option. So he had to get used to me being in the front seat addressing the LGBTQ issues. He had to get comfortable with my colleague who was sitting next to me, who is a transgender male in his 30s, and say, really, Senator, you want me to be in your wife's bathroom? But those are the kinds of things, but those didn't happen right away. We had to develop a little bit of relationship for that. So that's what I would say is, if you have any hesitancy because you think they're like these super important, super powerful people, you're giving them that power. Take it back. Just like you would tell clients to take back their power, to find their voice, social workers need to do so as well.
Thanks, Meg. Oh, go ahead, Emily, please.
Yeah, it was good. I was just going to say too, sometimes words and language get in the way. And so I find it helpful to kind of clarify and define what we're talking about. So, Representative Nordman, he has told me that he's a supporter of mental health and would like to get more mental health services in school. And so But on the other hand, a lot of people in the party are saying we can't teach SEL, social emotional learning. And so, just helping them understand, and asking, what do you think social emotional learning is, or SEL is? And so I said, social emotional learning is emotional regulation, self-management, problem-solving skills. I said another way to think about it is employability skills. SEL is employability skills, and it's going to help our students be better employees in the workplace when they leave school. And a lot of it is protective factors to mental health. So I feel like, again, we are the ones that can help clear up some of that language and communication for them and help them better understand.
That is so right, Emily. And I love that SEL is employability skills, not because everything that we should be doing should relate to employability, but that really speaks to a lot of the legislators. So you may hear me if you were in a subcommittee meeting talking about workforce issues in general. And I think it have really tried to work with some of our coalitions about how important that is to bring up, not because that is the top of our priority list, but because it's a way to build common ground and help these legislators understand the big picture and how things impact each other. So you finding that common language and explaining to them what it is that these different concepts actually mean. For example, this week we've had a bunch of the DEI in higher education subcommittee meetings, and I am certain that I did not move the needle with those two legislators that I was talking to. However, I think they need to understand that diversity, equity, and inclusion is about more than just race and gender. And that is how that's being framed up there right now. Emily, you talked about data a little bit earlier. And I think one of the things that is difficult, understandably, for social workers when they're in the advocacy realm is telling stories, because they don't want to violate confidentiality of their clients. How do you get around that? Are you able to share any stories with your legislators? And Meg, I'll pose the same question to you, because Emily looks like she's deep in thought. So if you got an example, Meg, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you can tell stories without giving away clients information. It's I used to do it with clients. I sometimes would tell a story and maybe make it about me, or maybe it was an experience I had, but I would tell it as a story, but not tell the client it was my story. It's telling a story. It's not presenting a case. I think if you're presenting a case and saying, I had this client with this diagnosis and this, and this, it might be, depending on the size of your town and them knowing where you work, that it could be identified. So it's not you're presenting a case, you're presenting a story about how something that they're considering is going to affect another human being, a real life example, or how something that has not been addressed by the legislature has affected somebody. So you tell a third person story, you don't refer to them as a client, you don't even refer to them as somebody who maybe is getting social work resources or services. Just tell the story of a human being. Just give an example of a human being who's going to be affected by what they're doing, or and maybe be affected by what they're choosing not to do. I don't understand the hesitancy for social workers to speak because they think they're going to break confidentiality. Unless you give personal identifiable information, you're not breaching confidentiality. But you're telling a story about people, about yourself, and that's what you have to make it real. And so if you go at talking about them or thinking you're talking about a case, it's going to fall on deaf ears. You have to make it real. And if you can tell a story that gets into really their area of interest, all the more powerful. But you're not going to breach confidentiality by telling a story without giving away information. You don't tell them it's somebody you used to work with as a client. I had a client that had this, or I had a client that had that. You don't do that. You just tell the story of why this is important.
Yeah, and I feel like when I tell stories, they aren't necessarily about kind of specific things, more, like especially talking about like the AEA bill and about how it would impact rural Iowa, and just letting them know how AEAs came to be, and it was to help with equity of services to rural Iowa. So, as someone on the challenging behavior team, I have, advanced level of expertise with challenging behavior. Well, a small school district like Exira Elkhorn can't afford to hire somebody and have them on staff, especially if they only have 1 or 2 students that need that high level of care. But with the AEAs, they're allowed to share me with 5 other school districts. And if we reduce this, then they're going to lose that service, or they're going to have to pay for it privately, which may cost them a lot more money than how the money's dispersed through AEA. So, and then we talk about, when they were taking away the library's services. So one of the services is AEAs have a centralized library where school districts can check out resources. And so I gave a specific example. So there's the Circles curriculum, which is a social emotional curriculum, and it's very expensive. So I can't remember off the top of my head, but we're just going to use the number $1,500, for example, for that curriculum. Well, maybe the school only needs it for one particular student. So they could pay $1,500 for that curriculum, use it, and then it just sits on their shelf. Or they can check it out from the library, and then when they're done with it, return it, and another district can check it out. If we remove access to media services, every school district is going to have to buy everything rather than having one place where they can check it out and borrow it. And so, again, speaking to the numbers, it's more cost effective to have a library that people can share rather than everyone having to have their own set of materials. So those are just some of the, kind of data and stories that I used when I was meeting with him last year. And I think the important thing too, just learning about relationships in general, right? People, because we're human and we're going to have behavioral errors and we're going to have mess ups in the relationship, and always, trying to come back to it and repair it, and have kind of, restorative conversations. And so I thought we maybe had, we were further along in our relationship than maybe he did and didn't, and so after the voting, and he ended up supporting a newer version of the AEA bill, and he also was a co-author, I think, of the bill that allowed teachers to carry guns in school. And so I had wrote him an email, and it was not rude, but I just expressing my disappointment, and that it felt responsive and not proactive. And I think then he was a little nervous to be around me the next time because he knew I didn't agree with some of his positions. And so, we had to have a conversation about that. And it's like, we're not always going to agree on things, but I am still here to help you in your role. And it's okay if we don't agree on everything. I still want to be able to give you feedback and support you in ways that I can support you.
It almost sounds like, Emily, you are modeling good professional behavior for him.
I'm trying. Well, and
modeling's a big thing.
It is. It is. And, I feel like we're missing some professionalism in our world. Congratulations on being elected official at City Council. I don't know if you call it elected official, but I did put myself out on the ballot this year and was elected to the Guthrie County Hospital Board of Trustees. So I don't know if I will ever run for something else, but I thought I would just get people used to seeing my name on a ballot. So just think about that. There are lots of things that you can run for.
Yeah, I'll echo that because I think it's important because it's also resulted in a change in how I interact with my senator Evans and Jones. So the Storm Lake City Council, it's a council of 5, 3 women, 1 Hispanic woman, and 2 social workers. So the other thing that that does is, and I don't know if this is true in every district, but when we have a legislative coffee, the city council, at least one or two of us, plus the mayor and our city manager, can have a pre-coffee with them. Now, how has that changed how I interact? I have to balance what I talk about. I don't want to jeopardize what my city is going to get for those people that I represent by pushing in the wrong direction on some other issues. So it's a constant balance.
Oh, it's empty?
But then the other thing is they knew me before I ran and got elected. And so that has helped that relationship. So that is something that's important. And I do think that they recognize that balance as well, that now I have to pay attention to what I'm saying, but there's still a good dialogue. And because I have that relationship now, professional relationship with Representative Jones, she was just made chair of the local government committee. So that's going to be invaluable for me. Those are going to be, so it changes what I talk to them about to a degree, but that's the other thing about it, getting on the board for the hospital, getting on your school board, serving on city committees. Those are other ways to make a difference if you're struggling with getting to Des Moines or struggling with the bigger picture of fighting against or for legislation. You can start at a very local level and have your voices heard, but I think it's really important to be able to do that. I also wanted to say about the formula for the coffees in Storm Lake that Denise mentioned. So it is our city manager who actually reaches out to the senator's office and the representative's office and schedules those for us. And she takes pride in beating one of our competitors, which is Spencer. Anyway, it's a little thing locally. But the other thing that makes it special, and it makes it special for the senator and the representatives, is the people who facilitate that meeting. They are high school students. Our students from the IJAG program at Storm Lake High School, they introduce the senator and the representative. They facilitate the question and answer period. They will bring the mic to who's ever speaking, and they will tell somebody when their time is up. So those students make a big difference. I also think, and Senator Evans and Representative Jones would not ever be unprofessional. We're just lucky in that. But I do think having the students there also makes a difference when we're talking about bills that affect them because they're listening. The other interesting thing is most of the times, the students who volunteer to do this are students for whom English is a second language. And so there's lots of subtle things that go into how we maybe influence the environment or the atmosphere of those legislative coffees. So that might be the other thing that you will want to think about is how things run. And you want to know how your legislative coffee or roundtable, whatever it's called in your area, is scheduled and how it's run. We do not require people to sign up in order to speak. I think larger areas might. So I think going in prepared, getting there early, being in the front seat, and always, always being polite and respectful, no matter how hard it is.
Yeah, hey Meg, I wanted to ask you if you could go into a little bit more detail about the group that you got together. Because I know if you're not accustomed to doing this, like Emily Donovan is pretty fearless. She's going to go to the coffee, whether she has somebody to go to the coffee with or not, because she's been at this for a while and she's been active for a while. And Meg, I think you too would fit under that description, but you also found real power in bringing this group together. And I, want to, if you've got any hints for folks who might feel like they're kind of alone in their area, how they can build a group or get together with another group in order to feel more comfortable in going to a legislative event.
Sure. So our group, so maybe this will sound like it's dangerous to be my friend, but in November of 2022, a minister came to me and said, we need a group in this community to support LGBTQ individuals as well as their families. And so I said, okay, we'll start PFLAG. And out went an email to like 13 or 15 of my friends and colleagues. We met in a coffee shop, and that built this group. And so then in February 23, when all these difficult bills were coming up, there was no doubt that we were all going to show up. And so somebody else from the group said, I'm going to order these shirts from Raygon. So we have these bright, they really are god awful ugly shirts that say, say gay every day. I think we wore them probably for the first two legislative coffees that we went to that year. And more people. So I've lived in Storm Lake for 13 years. And that year, in those legislative coffees, I met more lesbian, gay, and transgender people than I ever knew existed in my county, let alone my city. It gave people courage. And so all of a sudden we had our shirts and all the other shirts started to show up. The other thing is, because we are a largely Republican state, a largely Republican county and district, because we did that the first time, I believe it's because we did it the first time, we took over the narrative. Most of the rest of the legislative coffees, at least that year, and I think the following year, were predominantly attended by Democrats, and it was Democrats who spoke. But being together, sitting together, we knew who was talking about what issue. So we were a little bit more coordinated. We're all just pretty passionate about it. But I would say that even if you don't speak up at a coffee, you can learn a lot by listening. And then at the end, they probably don't stand around and speak a lot because they usually are doing more than one of those events a day on their Saturdays. At least go up, shake their hand, and make sure they know your name. And if you want to say, I'm a social worker from an agency or a social worker from the city or whatever, do that. And you just keep doing it. And then follow things up with emails. That's really important. I think being able to continue to follow up. I will tell you that I have a senator and a representative, and I don't think it's because it's me. I think it's who they are, but definitely Representative Jones usually emails like within 5 minutes. I don't know how she does it. She's constantly responding to emails. Senator Evans responds as well. And for at least those two, and in my experience, those emails are coming from them. Others may put it off to their staff to respond to those. I don't know. Denise might know more about that, but I think that's what we benefit from, because when they see my name now, they have a face, and that makes that relationship even stronger. We will never ever agree on anything, but at least they hear me and they know. And you know why this is important right now? Because we have midterm elections coming up. And you need to start preparing for them now, not when they get closer. So those relationships will be really important.
And I just want to build a little bit, Meg, on what you said. So Representative Jones, I don't think is on any of the committees that we follow particularly closely. I think she might be a member of state government. However, she is a lawyer, and she understands when a bill is poorly constructed and when it doesn't make any sense. So even if it might not be her area of expertise, subject matter wise, she can read a bill, and if we feel like it's a problem, she can take a look at that and say, yeah, you're right, this is not going to work. And that has also, I can't even remember what the situation was where I brought that to her attention, but she certainly has done that for us. And again, that's all because Meg has built this relationship with her. And now she knows that Denise Rathman, National Association of Social Workers, is connected to Meg. And because of that connection, she will actually come out and talk to me. It can be really frustrating. Also, to address a little bit of what you said, Meg, it is highly, people can't quite wrap their heads around this, but they literally each only have one staff person. unless they're a committee chair. Then they have the caucus staff and the LSA staff that can help them out with certain things. And certainly the caucus staff and the LSA staff, the legislative services, that is, staff help them write their bills and things like that. But just because they didn't answer your email doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't read it. They just get an overwhelming amount of correspondence. So don't lose hope and feel like they've completely blown you off. It is getting to the point, I think, where they're shutting down a little bit. It's a little harder and harder to get them to come out and such, but that is extremely helpful. And I'm going to mute somebody here who seems to have come off mute. So there was a couple of folks in the chat exchanging. I think somebody offered to get together some folks from Johnson County. That was Sarah Berry. So if people are interested in doing that with Sarah, you should send a reply chat to her. And then there was somebody from Sarah Stockdale from Cedar County is also interested in connecting with people. So if you can go in a group, I think that's extremely helpful. Emily, how do you feel about when you go to your town hall meetings in your area?
Ours I feel like are relatively informal. They usually the senator and the representative are there, and they kind of just do a rundown of what they're working on or what's coming up, and then they open it up to Q&A. So people can make comments or ask questions, and they will respond. When I have gone, if there was something I was really passionate about, I had the bill number and kind of a description of it, and then my concerns or comments or suggestions. And so after I'm done, speaking, then at the end, I will give them my written comments. And then I, like Meg said, follow up on Monday with an email. Just, thank you so much for coming out and meeting with us. Let me know if you have any questions. I would love to chat more about this with you. Always say thank you. And what else was I going to say about that? They're pretty low key. Again, I live in a small area. I know most of the people at my legislative coffee, so it's kind of a social event too. Even though most of us don't agree on issues, I still like them for other reasons. So it's they're not bad, and they are quick, so they usually don't have a lot of time to chat, because like I said, ours is from 8 to 9. It's their first one, and then they're off to another coffee. But again, I think it's a nice way for them to see your face and put a face to your name, so that when you do email them, they can make that connection. Representative Sorensen, he is out of Greenfield. He was my representative till they redistricted, and he was really good about getting back. His wife is his clerk, and so a lot of times she's reading the emails, and then she might respond, or she'll send it on to him. So that's another thing too, is sometimes the clerks are reading the emails, and they might be sorting through and kind of being the gatekeeper for which emails get to your elected official.
And sometimes they actually can help you if they know. Go ahead, Meg.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Denise. I was going to say the other reason, you might say, well, when you're at these local coffees, and we're not talking about I'm not, at least I'm focused on that today. You're not giving testimony like you do when you go before a committee hearing. You're going to express your views, your concerns, and raise questions. It's a very different thing than giving testimony, at least in our small one. But so with Representative Jones, if we address a bill and she's like, I don't know what you're talking about, she'll pull up the bill and she'll be reading it, and within minutes she'll say, oh, that's a terrible bill, that's not going to go anywhere. So it's very helpful, and she educates us about it. She'll explain the funnel to everybody in the room if that comes up. But the other reason to go and to even ask a simple question is you get them on record. At least in ours, and I'm assuming at all the other coffees or forums, the newspaper and the radio have representatives there as well. And so if they haven't said something on a particular bill, or there's something you haven't heard from them and you ask a question and their response, they're on record. And that sometimes is going to be very valuable to have that. The other thing I'd say about Representative Jones, and then I think we have to stop, is she is on the Appropriations Subcommittee for federal and other funds. I didn't know there was such an Appropriations Committee, but I think if you work with federal funding and have concerns about that, she would also be, that would also be a committee and a person to keep in your list of references.
Emily, any last words of wisdom for the group?
Well, that hour went fast for me. I don't know if it went fast for all of you, but you are welcome to reach out to me if you have questions, concerns.
Can you drop your email in the chat?
Yep, anxieties about it, but you are the experts, and you know, and I was saying too, another reason to go to those coffees is, and I mentioned it before, you want to make sure your legislators aren't in an echo chamber. So if the only people that come up are the people that support them, then they think that they should be voting for that it's kind of a mandate from the voters. So make sure that they do hear from you, so that they aren't only hearing from people that support a particular bill.
Yeah, I've also put my contact information in there if you have other questions. I know this has been kind of an informal kind of presentation or discussion rather than a presentation, so I'd be happy to answer questions. And if you need encouragement to go, just let me know.
And I would just like to warn everybody that Meg's town hall meetings seem to be much more constituent driven than the average town hall meeting or coffee that I have ever attended or hear about. So if yours is a little bit different, don't be disappointed. They're all a little different and run by different groups and have, I mean, I think sometimes it feels like the legislators just sort of, in fact, Meg even talked about how when she had a different senator, he really drove how that the town hall meeting went. And because Meg and her allies showed up with their t-shirts, they kind of knew what was going on. They showed up, they were there early and got the front row seats. And so it really can make a huge difference. And I really appreciate, Emily, what you said about the echo chamber. Yes, the majority party right now absolutely feels like they have a mandate, because they feel like they have been voted in, even if you didn't vote for them, or even if you know, they happen, you know, they're in a district that might be a little bit more balanced political party wise, they still feel like they have a mandate. But that doesn't mean that we should give up, because if they don't hear from us, they will absolutely think that they have a mandate. So we have to, if you disagree with the bill that they're working on and that they're supporting, they need to know about that disagreement. And Emily, I also really appreciated what you said about thank you notes. I'll just leave with this. So many years ago, when I first started this job, Mark Smith, a social worker, was the House Minority Leader. And I was in his office talking to him about something. And he said to me, Denise, thanks for that thank you note. He said, you always thank me. The blank, I won't say which of our allied professional associations, never thanks me. And that really stuck with me. I actually still do. We haven't done any yet this session, but we do handwritten notes to them, because that is going to stick out. They do get mail at the Capitol. You can write them a note at the Capitol and it's not lost in their email inbox. So thank you everyone for attending. We'll wrap it up now because I've got a 1 o'clock meeting I got to go to. Thank you, Kelly. She says, this has been so helpful and reaffirming. I need this today. Thank you. So many good nuggets. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks for attending, everybody. And it'll take us a little bit to get these CEU certificates out, because there were a lot of you today, but we will absolutely do that. You don't need them for another year and 11 months anyway. So thanks everyone who could join us. We appreciate it greatly. I'll keep it open just a little bit. So for those of you who are exchanging contact information, you can lift that up out of the chat. And thank you. Thank you so much. And we will send out an email with a registration link for the event that we're having in conjunction with our NASW Michigan chapter on running for office, because we are down to only one social worker in the state legislature, and he is working hard to defend our profession against some of these kind of obnoxious bills. But it's so much easier to get good policy when you have good elected officials. So thanks everybody for joining us. We appreciate it greatly.
I love seeing the people who want to run in the chat. Do it.
Yes.
I'll say on the local level, I ran my campaign for city council for less than $1,000. I kept it under $1,000 so I didn't have to do the reporting requirement. So it doesn't cost a lot of money. It just got to get out there and do it.
Got to put yourself out there. And I think Emily's running and being on the hospital board is fantastic, because if you pay any attention to your public hospitals, they do a lot of work with the clients who we serve.
Yes,
And
and Guthrie County does not have a lot of mental health services. So I'm like, if this is a conduit to bring more mental health to Guthrie County, then I'm gonna, make that little path there.
so thank you, everybody. That's it for today. We appreciate you greatly. Thanks for joining us. And I'll just give it another minute or two for folks to lift up out of that chat any resources that they need or any contact information that they need. And thank you, Meg and Emily, for presenting for us today. I appreciate that greatly.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
we will put this recording up on our YouTube channel. And so you can, if you know people who wanted to be with us today and weren't able to, you can direct them to the NASW Iowa chapter YouTube channel. Great, Sarah, thanks for letting me know. You've gathered up your contacts. Appreciate you doing that. All right. It's a 1:05, so I got to go. Talk to you soon, and thank you all so very much. Have a great weekend.
Good day, everybody. Stay
and,
safe.
And please consider going to a legislative coffee if you got one in your area. We appreciate it. Bye-bye.